What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if this is your first time here. I've been into prepping and survival in some form for many years. It started out when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I started out learning wilderness survival skills. I got a few outdoor survival type books, mainly military manuals, and I would take those and I would go out into the forest behind my house where I lived at the time, and I would practice those skills. I would build those deadfalls with those figure 4 triggers. I would build those twitch up snares. I would build those lean-to shelters. I would build those campfires, and I would start those fires with those primitive methods like a bow and drill, for example. And I got really good at doing that type of thing. And I would also go out and hunt, and I would build outdoor survival kits. And I think I learned a lot during that time, and those skills I learned then carry on to what I know here today, and it builds on my overall survival skills. However, later in life, when I was about 22, probably 23, I became interested in surviving the end of the world as we know it type events, like economic collapse, for example. And I started looking for information on those topics. I started following Kurt Saxon. Kurt Saxon started out in probably the 1970s, putting out survival information, and he had a lot of books he put out. I think he had 4 that was called The Poor Man's James Bond, 4 the Survivor series, Granddad's Wonderful Book of Chemistry. He also had a couple of videos he put out in VHS formats, since it's been a long time ago. He had a shortwave radio show that I listened to, and I bought a lot of his products. I had all 4 of The Poor Man's James Bond, all 4 of The Survivor, and I actually had both of his VHS tapes he put out. And I was subscribed to his email newsletter, and I learned quite a bit. However, when you're in this for a long time, you start to develop your own philosophy, your own ways of thinking. So I decided to make a video here today about that, and let you all know some of the things I think about prepping, and some of my philosophy, and hopefully that will help you all to focus, your own survival preps, and maybe develop your own survival philosophies. Number 1 is to prepare for personal and local events first. Your own personal and local SHTF type of events. Your own personal economic collapse, job loss, for example. A lot of people are losing their jobs right now because the companies that they're working for are trying to force them to take this or lose their job. So that is a personal disaster right there waiting to happen, a personal economic collapse. Your wife, your husband could get sick and lose their job. Perhaps one of your children could get injured, could get sick and have major medical bills, for example. Another example is local disasters like, hurricane, tornadoes coming through, earthquakes coming through, forest fires, volcano erupting, whatever in your local area that will affect you personally or affect you in your local area and not necessarily be nationwide or worldwide. Prepare for those type of events first, and then focus on those nationwide events like a total economic collapse, an EMP, a cyber attack, communist takeover of the federal government, for example, a nuclear war. You can prepare for those later. When you first start out, if you haven't got your prep squared away yet, get everything squared away for those personal, local disasters first. Once you get that squared away and you feel comfortable where you are, then you can expand out into preparing for those nationwide and worldwide type of events. When you're just starting out, if your preps aren't squared away yet, don't focus on those type of events yet. Think about what could happen to you personally, what could happen to you where you are, and prepare for those events now and get squared away for those. And then, like I said, you can expand out to those events like an EMP or something like that, or nuclear war, whatever threat you see. You can prepare for that later. But your first priority should be to get squared away with those personal events, prepare for those personal events, and those local events. And guys, number 2 is to store what you eat. A huge mistake I see many preppers making with their food storage is to put back foods that they aren't used to preparing, that you aren't used to consuming. Like putting back 1,000 pounds of hard red winter wheat when they've never used a grinder like one of these back here to actually grind that wheat in the flour. They haven't ever used that wheat that they've ground in the flour to bake that into bread, for example. They have no idea how to use those foods. Their system isn't used to processing those foods. They aren't used to preparing those foods, cooking those foods at all. However, they'll put that food back in those 5-gallon buckets with those Mylar bags and those oxygen absorbers and store that back, and they will think they're prepared. They'll have 400 pounds of hard red winter wheat, for example, for each member of their family and group, and they will think that they're prepared for whatever comes. And when something happens, an event happens, then in their mind, they can get that food and they'll learn how to use it then. It's extremely important to know how to use your food now. So the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to store back what you normally eat. The food you normally buy from your local grocery store. And focus on putting back a 3-month supply to start out with of those foods. And then once you get that 3-month supply squared away, you can expand that out to 6 months, then to 9 months, then to 12 months. But store what you eat. That way your system is used to that food, you're used to processing that food, you're used to cooking that food. That food is readily available for the most part still yet, but that is getting more and more difficult to find right now. Those supermarket shelves are beginning to look more and more barren. So it's extremely important to stock up now while you still can on those store-bought foods that you normally eat. Don't go for exotic foods, like the wheat. You can later on if you want, and you want to actually learn how to prepare that and use that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to focus on at least your first 3 months of the food you normally eat and put that back now. If you want to expand that out, like I said, to include more food for 6, 9, 12 months, you should strive for 3-month intervals in your preparedness. If you want to expand that out and add that hard red winter wheat, for example, the MREs, those long-term survival foods, you can do that. However, focus your first 3 months on those store-bought foods that you can buy at your local supermarket, those canned goods, those crackers, that peanut butter, that cooking oil. Put that back, the food you normally eat, write it down, keep detailed records for at least 1 week of how much your food your family consumes and how much it was, how much they consumed for each meal, and write that down. And then you can base your own preparedness plans on that, and you'll know approximately exactly how much to store for 3 months. You just expand that week's list that you have written out to a 3-month period. You can also expand that out to a 6, 9, 12-month period. But focus on the foods you normally eat and use and rotate. If you buy, say for example, some canned soup, and you put a case of canned soup back, and you use 2 cans of that soup for a meal for your family, and you want to go out, you want to write that on your list, and then when you go back shopping, you want to buy those 2 cans and replace. You want to use on the first in, first out basis. You can also build your food storage quite quickly if you buy that case of food, for example, a case of beans, a case of beef stew, whatever you buy, peanut butter, whatever, and you use that and you put it on your list to replace that, and say you use 1 can, you go out and you buy 2 to replace that with, and you keep doing that, and it will allow you to increase your food storage rather quickly, and it won't be as huge a shock to your wallet. But right now, everything is a huge shock to the wallet because the prices are going up. So I think it's extremely important to get that 3-month supply at least. I'm not saying that should be your be-all and end-all, the 3-month supply should be. I'm saying that should be your goal right now. It's at least a 3-month supply, and get that as quickly as you possibly can, and use it on a first in, first out basis. But don't focus on these exotic foods right now. Don't focus on that wheat, those whole grains, those grinders. Don't focus on those MREs, those long-term storage foods that are marketed by the survival food companies. Focus on the food you can pick up right now. Go out in your vehicle, go to the store and pick those foods up. Focus on those, date those, use those on a first in, first out basis, and replace. And guys, number 3 is to do everything you can to get out of debt. Pay off those debts, especially the debt on your home and on your property. It's extremely important to have a home to live in, because you don't want to be homeless. You don't want to be on the street living in a tent, because that definitely decreases your chances of surviving any type of disaster. You want to have your home base, and you want to have that paid for if at all possible. If you have one of those personal SHTF events, a job loss, if you get sick or something like that, and you can't keep paying that mortgage on your property, you can be foreclosed on. The bank can come in and remove you from that property, and you'll be living in a tent or in a car. So it's extremely important to pay off that debt as quickly as you possibly can. Maybe if you have, and this isn't financial advice, this is just common sense advice, and me talking about what I would do in the same situation. So keep that in mind, guys. If, for example, you have a house that is worth $300,000, for example, and if you can sell that for that $300,000 and then buy a smaller place for $150,000, you'll have less debt. And perhaps, even you might have that paid up till you only owe $100,000 on that property, for example, and you paid $300,000 for that property. You can sell that back, you can sell that for that $300,000, and you'll have that money left over to buy another smaller property, and you'll be out of debt. Perhaps that's a possibility. And if you can't do that, if there's no way possible if you get out of debt where you are right now, then maybe you can pay that payment, that mortgage payment up for 12 months in advance, for example. Pay that up, and then keep paying your monthly payment as long as you can to get that house paid off as quickly as possible. Pay on the principal as much as you possibly can to get that bill paid down, but get it paid off as quickly as you possibly can. And if you can't do that, then try to keep it paid up 6 months to a year in advance. That way, if something does happen, you have a buffer. You have some time to figure things out and to work things out to keep you from actually being evicted from that property and losing the money you've paid into that property. So get out of debt if at all possible. Avoid credit card debt. Avoid buying a new vehicle. If you can pay cash for that and you want that and you have your preps in order, then you can go do that. However, you're much better off to buy a good used vehicle, because new vehicles, the price, when you pull them off the lot, they start depreciating in value. So really, vehicles aren't the best investment, but concentrate first and foremost on your property and on your home and getting out of debt. And guys, number 4 is that government is not your friend. Be it federal, state, local, whatever, government is not your friend. The government's goal, especially the federal government's goal, is to take as much power as it possibly can, to reach in and take as much personal property, as much tax dollars from you as they possibly can, as much rights and freedoms from you as they possibly can. That's their main goal. The government is not your friend. The government will lie to you. The government will cheat you. The government will sacrifice you in war, sacrifice your children in war for their own political benefits. The government is not your friend. Don't think that you can avoid being prepared. Avoid taking your own preparedness into your own hands. Then when something happens, the government will come in and save you. The government will come in and feed you. They may, but more than likely, to get that protection from the government, that resources from the government, they will demand total control, total obedience on your part. Perhaps you might have to go to a FEMA camp to get fed, for example. So don't rely on the government, and don't think the government's going to be your savior, and don't think the government is your friend, has your best interest at heart. The government, like I said, federal, state, local, they want to take as much as they can from you via taxation. They want to take your rights. They want to destroy everything you have and consolidate power in their hands. It's the nature of the beast, so to speak. And guys, number 5 is to own your own property and to make it productive. This kind of goes in with point number 3, getting out of debt. But if you own your own property and you can make that property productive, then it puts you in a great position because you can produce a lot of your own food and you don't have to go out and actually buy that food at the supermarket, for example. You can put in your raised bed, you can work your soil to build that soil up, you can build chicken coops, you can raise chickens for meat and eggs, you can raise cattle, you can raise goats, you can raise a hog, for example, you can raise rabbits, you can have bees on your own property, you can make your property pay for itself, you can make it productive, you can make it produce the things you and your family need. If you have a large property, you can use that to produce your own firewood, for example. You can heat your house with your own firewood. Go out and cut that wood and bring that wood in to heat your home. You don't have to have those huge heating bills every month, during the winter time. It'll cost you your chainsaw maintenance, your gas and oil for that chainsaw, and maybe your truck for loading that up in and hauling that to your home. But it's going to cost you a whole lot less if it's on your own property than it would to pay that electric bill during those cold winter months for heating, for example. So look at your property. If you go to buy property, look at that property and say, how can I make this property productive? Is this property set up to be productive? Can I raise a garden on this property? What are the can I have chickens on this property? Can I put up fencing on this property? Look at your property as a way to produce more for you. Make that property pay for itself. If you can do that, and especially if you're debt free for that property, you're in the catbird seat, guys. You're much better off than the vast majority of people out there in the world. You have your property paid for, that property will produce a lot of your own food, maybe even all of your food that you want to eat. Maybe you can produce everything you need food-wise on your own property. And like I said, a great position to be in. And number 6 on my list is that you must be able to defend yourself. You must have firearms and you must know how to use those, and you must be willing to use those to defend yourself, to defend your family, and to defend your property if need be. Learn how to use those. You don't want to go out and buy, a handgun and never shoot that. You want to know how to use that to its maximum efficiency. So being able to protect you and your family from 4-legged predators and 2-legged predators is definitely essential, and it's also a key to my overall survival philosophy. Have a gun, know how to use that to its maximum efficiency, and be willing to use that if need be. God forbid that you might need to use that for self-defense, to protect you, to protect your family, to protect your property. However, when it comes to the law, protecting your property isn't seen as a means to use lethal force. This isn't legal advice, but this is just common sense advice that most people should already know. If you use a firearm, deadly force, to defend your property, then you can be prosecuted for that. So keep that in mind, guys, when protecting your property and protecting your life, protecting your family. You might want to look into alternative ways besides just a firearm. You definitely want to have a firearm, but you might want to look into other ways of defending yourself, like, say, a big can of bear spray or something like that beside your door in your home, a taser, a stun gun, whatever that you find appropriate. You might want to have that too as a non-lethal option, because you don't always need to use deadly force. You need to always keep in mind the legal repercussions for doing that. But you should definitely be prepared and equipped to do that if necessary. And number 7 is to develop your own survival plan. I have a lot of people email me asking me questions. What should I do where I am? And I do not know what you should do where you are. Everyone's survival preps will be different depending on your personal philosophy, your personal needs, your situation, your finances, where you are. You need to develop your own survival plan. You can take principles like this and apply these to your own survival plans. However, when it comes down to the minute details of that plan, then you need to have your own personal survival plan based on you and your family, based on where you are, and based on the threats that you see, based on the financial situation that you're in. Develop your own plans. Look at where you are and figure out what you need and what's the best way for you to accomplish what you need. And guys, number 8 is to stop paying unnecessary taxes. I'm not telling you not to file a tax return. I'm not telling you to stop paying taxes. I'm not telling you to cheat on your taxes, if that's even possible. In my opinion, it's not possible to cheat on your taxes, because taxation is theft from the federal government, in my opinion. However, what I am saying is to take every deduction, find every loophole you can possibly find to avoid paying taxes on that income. You have no say-so in how your tax dollars are spent, be it federally, state, local, whatever. You have no say-so whatsoever in how that money that is taken from you is spent. So you want to avoid paying if you possibly can. Any deduction you can find, anything you can figure out to weasel out of paying that tax, then you need to do that. But like I said, you want to keep it legal. I'm not telling you to do anything that's illegal, because if you cheat on your taxes and you get caught up in that, it can cause a lot of legal issues for you. And I suggest that you get a good accountant that will actually help you to figure out all of your deductions, because you don't want to leave no money on the table. If there's a deduction, you want to take it. Don't pay the government your money via taxation unless you absolutely have to. Do everything you can to avoid paying taxes. If you can get paid cash, for example, then that's a good position to be in. And guys, number 9 on this list, and I mentioned this just a second ago, is to have your own home business. Be self-employed if at all possible. I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. It was called Survival Through a Home Business, if I remember correctly. And if you have your own home business, if you're self-employed, you are in a much better position than you are working for, say, the local factory up here or something, working for the local grocery store, working for the local construction company, whatever. If you can do that on your own, then you're more free. You have more say-so in your life. You can also take those tax deductions I was talking about. You can also work harder, put in more hours, and hopefully make more income. And also, things like this that employers are trying to make employees take. If you're self-employed, this isn't an issue any longer. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, because you're self-employed. You're more in control of your own life. And like I said in my video that I made a few weeks ago, try to figure out what you like to do. You don't want to start doing a home business and get into that and go force into that, and it be something that you don't enjoy. You want to enjoy what you're doing. You want it to be enjoyable and profitable. You also want it to be recession proof. You want it to be something that people are going to need no matter the economic situation. We can always be, self-employed. If you are working online, for example, it's a great way to make money. It's a great way to be self-employed. However, if the grid goes down, it's going to put a lot of people making videos, for example, or people who has websites, people who are selling on Amazon, people who are selling on eBay, for example. Whatever business you're doing online, if that grid goes down, that power went down, it'll put you out of business. So you need a backup business, in my opinion. If your main thrust is to make your living working online, you need to have something else as a backup business set up that you're already doing on the side, something that will be in demand regardless of the power being on, regardless of the economic conditions, if at all possible. And guys, number 10 and last on this list is protect your health. Your health is the most important thing in your survival period. If your health is bad, if you can't breathe, if you're on lots of medications, if you can't walk, a half a mile without having to rest 4 or 5 times, you need to try to do something about that. Get in the best physical shape that you possibly can, because it's going to be difficult to survive, difficult to make that property productive, difficult to have that home business, difficult to defend yourself if you're in ill health. You want to get yourself in the best condition that you possibly can for you. Everyone's going to be different. Not everyone can be a triathlete, for example, but you should look at your own health and figure out what you need to do personally to get in the best shape that you possibly can. Don't look at everyone else. Don't look at what they're doing. Figure out what you can do and how you can improve your health, because it's important and it will definitely go a long way towards ensuring your happiness and your survival. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a big thumbs up. Greatly appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks, guys, for watching. MD Creekmore, I'm out of here, and I'll see you all in the next video, hopefully.